Disclosure, this video is sponsored by Tailwords, the maker of Bannerlord. They sponsored me to play Bannerlord, particularly the new expansion War Sails, and provide you with historical commentary. Now keep in mind, this is a fictional world, particularly the continent of Calradia, but it's heavily influenced by our own history. Note that I got access to a pre-release build, so they're subject to change here. And I personally love Bannerlord and its predecessor, Bannerlord Warband, because it's one of the few games where you have decision-making capability on the tactical, operational, and strategic level. And you basically start out as a single guy, then fighting, conquering, and looting your way up to being basically an emperor, if you like. And so you have, in the beginning, you manage your own inventory, basically. Which you can see here. You have like a civilian outfit, a battle outfit, and a stealth outfit. Note the stealth gameplay was added in 1.3, and later on you manage your party. You can see my current party, and you also have a clan where you can have companions, and then you can create your own caravans, different parties. Later on you get fiefs like castles and towns, and here, for instance, I haven't unlocked it yet, you manage your kingdom. So this is unique, and I really like this playstyle. I have in both games more than 400 hours. I will show you a Steam screenshot. Yeah, it allows for many different playstyles. So now Bannerlord's new expansion War Sails has a lot of features. First off, you get a complete new faction, the Nords, which you might already know from the predecessor game Warband. Since War Sails is set before Warband, you know why they only show up now. Now a complete new layer was added to the game in terms of warfare, namely naval warfare. Now these are inspired by medieval battles and also the medieval ships of the time. So you have, for instance, the Nords, which are basically Vikings with their longbows with very shallow draft, but there are also ships from the Mediterranean basically in the game with huge rams that are bigger, higher, and also have a very deep draft. And these of course are important both in combat and on the campaign map. And the map has been expanded. North of Sturgia now there's the Northern Sea with islands and rivers and open waters where the Nord faction is located. And pirates were added, fishermen were added, trade fleets were added, so you can live out as a pirate or as a privateer or as an anti-pirate and hunt down sea raiders. Now in terms of ship, you get 20 unique ships. 15 of them are warships, light, medium and heavy sizes. Also different equipment possible. For instance, on the galleys, you can put on a ram, you can put on a ballista. But on the Nord longboats, you're usually far more limited. They are although way better made for boarding action. Then there are 4 trade ships and there's also a civilian fishing vessel. They are all modeled after historical vessels with distinct handling shaped by realistic wind and wave physics. You can customize the different weapons you have on there. For the ballista there are at least 3 different ammo types. Depending on the ship's size and type, you can customize up to 9 different elements. Those different elements, like these basically slots in the game, also have a wide variety of what you can put into these slots. In both in quality, but also different features. The expansion also features a new campaign, basically a naval campaign, and you can also set up now naval blockades on enemy towns as well. Of course, new companions were added, new banners, hairstyle, tattoos and armor, and of course if you enjoy the smithing game, new unique weapons and shields were added. And of course, there are plenty of naval battles in game, from engaging small fishermen to engaging enemy fleets made of galleys. So first off now, the general setting for Bannerlord. As mentioned, it's a fictional continent, but it's basically set in our timeline of our 10th and 11th centuries. So basically this is during the shift from the early to the high Middle Ages. And Bannerlord specifically plays at a time of around 1084. Now for those of you who know Warband plays about 170 years later. We have several cultures in this game, If you look at the encyclopedia, you have like the kingdoms here, or you can also call them cultures, and you have the Aserai, which live in the steppes. And I'm currently at war with them because I attacked one of their convoys. You have Britannia, which are heavily influenced by the Picts and Celts. Then you have the Western, North, and Southern Empire. These are basically very close to the Byzantine Empire. And then you have the Nords, which are new in the Warsail DLC. But more on them soon. Now, what is very important in both history and also in warfare is geography and terrain. And as you can see, we are now in the far north. As you can see, there's a lot of snow and mountains and woods. So it's hard to move around on foot. And this is the same with Scandinavia, with the fjords in Norway, but also Denmark and Sweden. So, for instance, you might wonder why Denmark is considered a part of Scandinavia, although it is the northern part of Europe. It's north of Germany. And this is particularly because of the straits and fjords that are nearly everywhere. As such, the cultures, they are often used naval transportation far earlier or far more extensively than other cultures, because it is hard to get around here, as you can see. And so let's look in comparison further down. Here, like, this is Flandria, which is basically inspired by France. And another issue is, of course, in real life, and also basically depicted in this game as well, the resources for these ships, the three primary resources were wood, of course, for the hull, the oars, and the mast. And then you needed iron for the fasteners, and you needed wool for the sails. And there were plenty of them available in Scandinavia. Now, if we look at the Viking ships, or Nord ships in this case, they are very shallow. They can move quickly on land and provide a lot of mobility, because they provide basically tactical, operational, and strategic mobility. Now, what is the difference between the three? Basically, tactics is concerned with how you win a battle. Operations are mainly concerned on how to win a campaign, and strategic is about how to win a war. Now, these are all relative. Basically, tactics is the lowest amount of time and geography, or space. So time and space is very limited, and also the troop strength. And the more troop strength, the more time and space you have, the higher the level gets. And for instance, like for the Second World War, strategic mobility was usually provided by railways. Operational mobility, you could say by trucks, but also tanks and the tracks, but there's quite a difference. And then you had the tactical mobility when you had like these vehicles directly in combat. So basically, operational mobility for a tank would be going from a certain location to the battlefield. And quite often they were usually transported by railway. And there's, for instance, a difference between a medium and a heavy tank, because heavy tanks usually had a worse operational mobility, even although on tactical mobility the speed could be the same with a medium tank. For instance, the German Tiger tank was not that slow, but since it was a heavy tank, it could not move as far on the operational level. And this is in stark contrast to the Viking ships, because the Viking ships had basically tactical mobility when they raided a village, operational mobility when they traveled between the different villages or areas, and strategic mobility, for instance, when they went out from Norway and basically went, for instance, to the English coast to do some raiding there. Now let's take a look at the Nords, which are new with this DLC. If you played the predecessor, Bannerlord Warband, you know the Nords are already in this game, but since this game plays about 170 years before, they were added now. And needless to say, the Nords are inspired, heavily inspired, what we call the Vikings. Now, there are quite many misconceptions about Vikings. Now, many of us think they are culture something. Strictly speaking, Vikings were not a culture, they were an occupation. Now, basically, the name is derived from the Old Norse word Vikinger, which means basically raider or pirate, which I'm currently also doing in my campaign. Generally, we use the term in a broader scale. To quote the historian Gareth, although trading, craft, seafaring and settlement and many other aspects of Viking society may be equally important, it is the raiding which gives us the concept of a Viking age. And since this is a computer game and heavily focused on conquest, also on to a certain degree on trade and on combat, this is also the main aspect we engage in the game with. Now in this game you also have each faction has its clans and its fiefs, and also you can see the wars here. So you have basically an in-game encyclopedia that is updated, so you can also search here, which is really great. And you can for instance with diplomacy, you can mark them all. For instance, I raided or I intercepted an Azari convoy, so now they are my enemies. I don't have any allies, and most of them are neutral. Now what's very interesting here we can look at the various different troops that are available. And as you can see, just for the Nords, we have a lot of different units. Now these are basically generally in a tier. So the upgrade, for instance, versus the Nord Youngling, that is basically your recruit unit. Here we have the perfect tree. And this is also something new. These are ship-based troops now. They have a mariner trait, which allows them to be better when fighting on ships. For instance, this is regular infantry, and the Nords have this trait, like this one as well. Let's see for the Sturgians, which are closely related to the Nords. They have, they also don't have it. And they come also in different sets on the battlefield. They have various skills and equipment. So all this also has, you determine if you get a Nord Youngling and he has enough experience. You can decide, do you upgrade it to a warrior or to a huntsman, and then further on down the tree. So you make very important decisions and can adapt them to your playstyle as you need them. And also you can try out different tactics or approaches on how this works in the game. Now for instance, for the Cusite Kennate, they have very good horse archers. And here the Cusite heavy horse archer is basically that's kinda a tank. So he has a lot of step arrows and is well armored and fast. But of course, like every unit, there's a certain counter to them. Now when it comes to the Vikings, I think it's very important to keep in mind that some of the early portrayals of them are heavily influenced by how history was communicated. They were known to raid coastal villages and also monasteries. Now, a lot of information we have in many cases is in written form. And since monasteries had to a certain degree a strong grip on the literacy aspect and on writing down stuff, a lot of the information is for us about Vikings to a certain degree comes from some of their victims. This, of course, some of this has been debunked, of course, some of the aspects were confirmed or something along those lines. As always with history, particularly a few centuries ago, it's hard to determine. Sometimes Vikings are portrayed as fierce warriors, but as basically a gang of hoodlums that don't have a particularly strong sense of organization or something, which is quite wrong. Now, we are talking here of organized war parties or even a military force. Now, you can probably don't compare them with a modern military in that sense, but for the time period, definitely comparable. After all, as you know, warfare is very dependent on logistics and supplies. And if you don't have this properly working, you're not gonna raid something, you're gonna starve on your way to the raid. Or on the way back. And we know that the Vikings had a strong focus on mobility, logistics and recon that allowed them to attack their targets by surprise. supplies was a key element in the Viking success when raiding various areas. And for instance, their boats, since they were shallow, they could also travel rivers along and then attack cities that were not necessarily coastal in the sense of the sea, but they were basically on the rivers, and many cities were located on rivers for various reasons. Now, another aspect which is often overlooked is that Vikings used horses for their mobility wrong. For the Vikings, these horses were mainly used for transport and usually not during combat. Thus, they acted more as mounted infantry, not as cavalry. This is also depicted in the game, for instance. There are certain perks where your operational mobility is increased when you have a certain amount of horses, that your troops get faster, your regular infantry gets faster. But when you, on the tactical level, basically on the battlefield, these guys are not mounted anymore because they might to know how to ride on around in basically a non-combat situation, but controlling a horse in combat is something quite different. So horse combat is a part of the game, but of course not all units are capable of this. And sometimes they combined both land and sea attacks. For instance, it's known that the Vikings attacked from land and sea together, for instance in Exeter in 876. Here they deployed a party that would attack from the land route and meet up with a seafaring party. These freed the land party from carrying around supplies and thus allowed them to move faster. Now on the logistical side, the Vikings were quite sophisticated. The original raids were small and seasonal, but later on they performed large-scale raids and even performed during winter. Considering that land wars by leading kingdoms in that area were usually not conducted during winter, this should give you an indication on how well Vikings were able to manage their supplies. Now they achieved this by taking over monasteries, towns and other places early in winter. And since these places basically stocked up to be ready for the winter, the Vikings basically took these stockpiles and were now plenty supplied with supplies. And as you might know, a common countermeasure to an enemy attack is a counterattack. But since the invaded kingdom would have to raise and supply an army during that time of the year, which was quite difficult, counterattacks were quite unlikely. And here Gareth Williams has a particularly interesting statement. When even major kingdoms struggled to maintain permanent field armies, the fact that the Vikings managed to campaign for years on end, often in hostile territory, is perhaps a more impressive achievement than any success they may have enjoyed on the battlefield. So here you can see that on the operational and or strategic level, depending on the size of what they conducted, they were really sophisticated. So if you think about Vikings that they just attack coastal village, which is defended by a few peasants, then this is probably a bit of an underestimation of their capabilities. Now, of course, you might ask, how could the Vikings basically stop from raiding? Now, as mentioned before, Viking raids were heavily reliant on mobility and supplies, and if one or both ideally were denied, their capability to conduct their form of warfare was heavily limited. Now, this was achieved, for instance, by building fortified bridges that denied them access to various rivers that were vital for their raids. Additionally, fortified towns on the coast allowed the defenders to hold out longer and also serve as supply base for defending armies. When we think of Vikings, we often think that, particularly, for instance, the axes, also the helmets, although the horned Viking helmet is a myth, were very distinctive, but some scholars note that in that regard, the aspects were rather similar. So here we have now a scenario with a large naval battle. So basically we have about 36 ships, the enemy has 28 ships, and we have both about 1000 men. Now I set this now to maximum battle size, so that means about 1000 soldiers in total. And let's see how that goes. Now keep in mind, in medieval times, large naval engagements were rather rare. And generally the issue was that the fleets or the big ships could carry very limited amount of supplies. So quite often they only had supplies for like 3 to 4 days and they had to hug the coast. And for instance, the Byzantine Navy versus the Arab Navy or something, they usually were working together with the land campaign. So like the Byzantine were defending Constantinople and providing a kind of a wooden wall, whereas the Arab and Avar forces used their land armies in conjunction with the ships and could supply each other basically. And ship-to-ship combat in small scale was more regular between basically merchant ships and pirates. So let's get on in. This should be a rather interesting fight. Now we have as a flagship a Dromon, which was a bireme of an improved bireme from the Byzantines. And these were fast ships actually. They were huge but quite fast as well. And we have like 96 men on one ship. We are limited to 8 ships, which kind of makes sense because as it gets too confusing. I mean, it's already quite confusing. I tried this battle before with less men. So full speed ahead. See the enemy in the front. Yeah, we definitely have the largest ships. Of course, we need to give our troops the command to attack as well. Let's go for engage. And ideally, since we have a really heavy hitter and we have a ram, which were also rather rare at that time, because basically the construction shifted. So originally, the reinforcing beams and everything were built in after the planks, but at a certain point around the 7th, 8th century, they started to build the skeletal parts of the ship first and then added the plank, which increased the structural integrity of the ships quite a lot, and which made ramming, here our ballista engages, far less effective, and they changed to a spike that was above the waterline, and it is suspected that it was used to destroy the enemy's oars to basically make limit its mobility. So let's see, let's try a frontal ram here. So ideally we gain now some distance. I mean, that guy tries to follow us and let our fleet engage that we get a perfect angle to do a 90-degree ram. Ideally with full speed. The game tells you actually if it was a ineffective ram, a weak ram, average ram. I think the best I got so far was a good ram. But you can also take out complete ships at once with that. Let's just use the Latin CL for now. Or I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly. It's not Latin like the language, but instead of the I you have 2 E's. Oh, that was a nice hit. And we also took it out completely as well. Probably it was damaged already from... Oh, 15,000 damage from ramming. Okay, that... I think I saw a few thousand before as the maximum. Oh no. Wrong angle. The 48 one. Also the ship is heavily damaged, the 48. This might be a kill. Ram. Average ram. It's almost gone. Look. Oh. That ballista hit at least. And come on. Oh, it got more people on it. Interesting. And we sunk it. Nice. What are they doing? Are they swimming? Yeah, they're swimming on the other ship, but now they might be perfect targets for our archers. We hit our own ship's ramming thing, and yes! Okay, 2 ships in a row, nice. And they all drowned, it seems. Or are they swimming it back? No, they seem to live. Oh, one enemy ship is now 113 soldiers. Yeah, so definitely they swim aboard on the other ship. So ramming seems to be of limited effectiveness if the enemy is too near. Now with war sails, something new was introduced, namely naval blockades. As you can see here, Great Fjord is under siege. We have here our fleet. There's our garrison, and then there's the enemy. And we have now can make the decision to break into the garrison and sacrifice some of our troops and ships to reinforce the garrison on land, or try to lift the siege. Well, let's see how it goes. Attack the blockade to help the defenders break through the blockade. I think we attacked the blockade. And yeah, that seems to be the Sturgeons. We have less ships and less men. But then again, every man they lose, they can't use in the siege. Now, naval blockades usually needed ships that came later in the Middle Ages, like corks. Corks were particularly high ships, and they had a lot of space, so they could store a lot of supplies, particularly also water, that they could stay many weeks on water or even for months. And one issue was that usually naval battles didn't happen so often because it was pretty hard to actually find the enemy. Because, yeah, you didn't have modern navigation communication systems, let alone tracking technology. So it was extremely difficult to determine where an enemy would be at sea. And even if we had some intelligence, then there was still the winds, the rough seas, and a lot of other factors that were quite a problem. Often then only fleet action really happened when a commander was able to position its fleet accordingly and knew where the enemy would likely be. So he waited somewhere near the coast, and then when the enemy came up, he could intercept the fleet. This was, for instance, the situation in 1217 when a fleet departed from a port in Calais and bring supplies and reinforcements to another port, and it could be intercepted. Okay, let's go in. Do we have Ballista on the ship? No. I guess we go for engaging. So this is really cool also that there are quite different ships in this game. So these ones don't have a ram. And they are shallow, which makes actually boarding quite more troublesome. And okay, we have generally more troops. Yeah, we have about 70 more troops. So I don't know, we probably this time go immediately for boarding action to take out the enemies as fast as possible. And we keep the numerical advantage and extend it and exploit it even further. I mean, I kind of want to ram the small ship here. Let's see how it goes. I should have used the boarding operation. Are you ready for boarding? Okay, guys, come over and help me. That was a kind of mistake, was I did. Oh, nice. Yeah! Archers from our ship. Nice. Yeah. Our archers saved me. Okay, gotcha. Nice. Oh, I even gained a level. Okay, these are all our guys. Oh, this one has a ram actually. Is this one of ours? No. Oh, this one is damaged. Look at this. Can I get up behind them? That's the question. And if I do, let's try to get to this archer. Yeah, got him. Gotcha. Oh, there's a lot of enemy archers on the other ship. Oh. Oh. Yeah, time for a swim. So that's a tactical retreat. Hopefully they don't shoot me while I take a swim. No, don't throw away! Guys! It's me, our Admiral. Or however you call this in the Nord. Fleet, Navy. Come on. Yes! So how is the overall situation? Well, we have more soldiers than they have, still, but not by a wide margin. Time to turn the tide for... Oh, it dropped into the water, nice. As usual, it's chaotic, and with the sea it's even more chaotic. Because there are 5 of our guys somewhere nearby and 3 of the enemy. I think these 3 trying to get one of ours. Wow. He took some... Okay, let's position you that way. Oh, he knows where the arrows are coming, alright. Nice. Exactly what I wanted. So they're down to 38 men. Yeah, I guess in real life he wouldn't swim there because he would be crushed in a matter of seconds. So how can I move? I need to get between the ships. Okay, they're pulling in on our ship. They're blocking us with another of our ships where nobody's on anymore. Oh no. Yeah, nice shot. Can we move backward? We should be if we use oars. And we can turn while not... Yeah, 15 against 60. We should be able to win this. Yes, boarding was successful, it seems. Oh, they also tried to counterboard? I'm not sure. At least they are throwing hooks. Come on, charge. Oh, they're still trying to row. Well, they cost them 2 men. Yes, we won, finally. Let's see if we can break the siege. Suffered tremendous losses. And good loot. Yeah! The naval blockade is broken. We can go into port. So, next we look at Viking weaponry. Now here our knowledge of this weaponry is quite extensive in some regards, but in other regards the particular technical information is sometimes quite limited. To quote N. Pedersen, numerous sources offer information on Viking weaponry. The annals and chronicles of royal courts and monasteries in Western Europe record the violent acts committed against Christian communities by armed warriors from Scandinavia. Old Norse sagas and poetry, on the other hand, praise the art of the warrior and not least his weapons, many of which are described and named in poetic terms. Contemporary illuminated manuscripts, stone carvings, and the famed Bayeux tapestry, created in the late 11th century, provide further insights into the world of the warriors and the tools of their craft. However, precise technical descriptions or accurate depictions of individual weapons are rare. Modern knowledge of Viking Age weaponry is largely derived from the many weapons recovered over the past 2 centuries: swords, axes, spears and lances, bows and arrows, as well as much rarer wooden shields and defensive body armor. Description of Viking activity indicate that Scandinavians also had experience in using large constructions for direct attack or siege warfare, although the physical remains have long since vanished. Now let's start off with swords. Now iron swords were the most prestigious and expensive weapon of the time. Now they had both single-edged swords, as you can see here. Here you see the back is not an edge here, only the front. But the most common was the double-edged sword. So here we have double edge on both sides. They had a length of usually the most common about 9.0 meters or about 3 feet. Characteristic features was a broad shallow groove, also called fuller, as you can see here. So this would reduce the weight of the weapon. That was the main intention here. And additionally, the edges were specifically treated, as well as other parts, to increase the strength and elasticity of the weapon. So they received pattern welding, for instance. Now, for the upper guards here, they were generally, all of these weapons had an upper and a lower guard, from what we have found so far. And initially they were 10 to 11 centimeters, and this increased later on to 16 to 17 centimeters. Now about the pommels. Usually they had pommels at the end, but not always, and they commonly were copper or iron. There were also silver, bone, or antlers, but those were rather rare. So here we have bronze. This would be a northern lordly pommel. Here we have one with runes. As you can see, in the game, there's a lot of variety. Now, I did double check how this is historically accurate. Now, let's move on to axes. And as you probably know, axes are mostly associated with Vikings. Now, what does the research say? Pedersen notes the following. Next to swords, axes were widely used in battle, and numerous axes, or rather axe heads, have been recovered. In well-equipped graves, axes may be found alongside other weapons, but they appear to be more common as single weapons in less conspicuous burials, suggesting a difference in rank and economic means among the deceased and their families. On the other hand, the position of axes alone is not limited to poorly furnished graves. The Danish burying hole chamber burial contained a highly decorated axe head. And to judge from the quality of the silver inlay, it must have represented considerable value. Now, generally, there's a speculation here about what considered an axe to be a tool or a weapon. And this is the same, for instance, with bow and arrow. Was it an offensive weapon, or was it mainly used for hunting? Which we'll discuss more later. Now, for instance, in the example of the Letby ship grave, an axe head was found at the front of the ship, but most likely it represented a tool for the slaughtering of the animals that were also given to the burial. Similarly, Pedersen notes, axe heads found in female graves give equal cause for speculation. Are they true weapons, or rather a part of assemblage of tools and kitchen utensils used by the mistress of a household? Generally, axes were made of iron. Most of them were plain. Some had narrow grooves. Let's see if we have one here. So this probably comes closest to something with narrow grooves. The decorations with silver, copper, and even gold were possible, but also rather limited. And there have been also various axe heads found with unusual size or shapes. So, as you can see, we have a large selection here. Now, various axe head shapes were found, and likely some of them were imported or had special meaning, for instance, a special decoration. To quote, most axe heads with a long helm at the back of the head were most likely introduced from the eastern Baltic region, whereas others with elongated, often decorated blades and in some instances extremely long spurs at the head probably originated in the area south of the Baltic. These axes are very likely prestige weapons, possibly even exotica, brought home by their owners or received as gifts. Now next up are spears. Similar to swords and axes, they were also found in burials, but also in settlements and weapon deposits. Now, spearheads mostly used for heavy thrusting spears or lances were found. As before, iron was mostly used. There are some white pattern welds or that have but there are also some that have decorations or special designs with copper and silver. Now, the shape was mostly leaf-shaped with rounded or angular shoulders towards the socket. So I think we have here we have a leaf shape, very nice one. And generally they were shifted to the shaft with rivets. Now, archaeological finds in burials suggest that the shafts had a length of about 2 meters, which is about 6.5 feet. Now, next are bows and arrows. Those can be crafted currently in the game. And here we also have a strong distinction because most of the parts were made of wood or other organic materials, like the bowstring, and these generally rot away. So the amount of archaeological findings we have here are far more limited. Although we found quite many arrowheads, which of course has a reason, to quote Pedersen. Unlike the wooden bows, arrowheads of iron are common, occurring in burials and as single arrowheads in settlement contexts. Mineralized remains of organic material corroded together with tightly packed arrowheads in several graves suggest that whole bundles were deposited in a quiver made of leather or wood. Now, arrowheads generally use the tang. A tang is the extended part at the base that fits into the shaft. The alternative is that you have like a socket where you put the shaft into the arrowhead. Those were mostly found in the south of Scandinavia. Now, the shape of arrowheads was mostly the lanceolate multi-purpose type. This is basically a shape that looks like this. But there were also arrowheads found with a triangular or square cross section. These were introduced for military use. Now, for the cross section, you need to look directly at it. And yeah, this would be more or less kind of a square. We have this. This would make in the cross section likely a square. So there are, if you want to check and see all the different arrowhead differences, I found an interesting post online. It's linked in the sources section in the description, so you can look up the different arrowhead designs and how they were classified, and there's a lot to talk about. Now, as mentioned before, similar to axes, it's not certain if bows and arrows were added to burials as offensive weapons or as tool intended for hunting. Now, in regards to arrow shafts and the feathers at the end of an arrow, we have limited information. To quote, arrow shafts and feathered flight ends are rarely preserved. Evidence from the EDB bow chamber grave indicates that the shafts, in this case made of birchwood, had been fitted not only with feathers, but with cast copper alloy nocks consisting of a subconical base with a deep notch and tang. Now, next are defensive weaponry. And since we can't craft currently in-game shields, let's take a look what we have in the shop here. And here I think we have the preview option. Yeah, that's excellent. So this seems to be, from my understanding, a very common shield that the Vikings used. Besides those strings, I would say. But the other elements, yes. So let me explain. In popular culture, Viking shields are quite often dominant, and unlike some other depictions, this seems to be correct. According to all the Gulan-Thing and Frosta-Thing laws, every man on board a leading ship was required to have a shield. Very few complete shields have survived, but remains of originally 64 shields in the Gokstad ship burial uncovered in Norway give an impression of their size and construction. Now, generally, these shields that were found had a disc with a diameter of 94 centimeters, which is about 3 feet. They were joined with thin wooden boards, as you can see here. There you have the boards going down that way. And many likely were covered with a leather cover, which we don't have in this case. Now, in the center of the shield, there's a hole, which you can see here, because that's for the hand grip. So this is like the wooden grip is across the shield. And then, of course, since it's not angled, it's flat, you have to put your hand there, so you make a hole. And this was covered generally with an iron boss. similar to here. Other metal fittings were like the rim bindings, which we also have here. And of course, occasionally there was a metal grip instead of a wooden grip here. Now, some shields were covered, which we know from law texts, sagas, and the Bayeux tapestry again. And some of the colors described, scholars assume like they denote they were red and white, and denote the red was probably the color of the wood itself, and the white was a different color added additionally. And they were like also mentioned that certain symbols or shapes were indicated that these were special, like from the kings, the guard, or something else. And also like that certain colors showed that there were peaceful intentions. So it might have been that the colors actually were kind of dynamic depending on the situation. Now next is body armor, and here we have sadly very limited findings. To quote, King Olaf's men were also equipped with body armor. Images of Viking warriors indicate that helmets were used, but archaeological finds, usually only metal fragments, are extremely rare. Leather, a probable alternative to metal, has left no trace. The most complete helmet, a simple iron cap fitted with eye guards, was recovered from a richly furnished cremation at Tjernmundbu in Norway. Small rings at the edge of the cap suggest that the neck was protected by a cover of chainmail. So chainmail, as you can see here, partially is basically, as the name implies, an armor made of mostly thousands of iron rings, and they were welded together or held together with rivets. And of course, these were available, particularly in the early stages, to very few people because they were quite material and labor intensive and thus expensive. Although it's noted that the scenes in the Bayeux tapestry indicate that mail shirts might have been more common around that time. And the Bayeux tapestry is about the preparations for the invasion of England, which led to the Battle of Hastings in 1066. So which is also more or less the time that the game takes place or is inspired. So the 11th century in our time. Finally, as mentioned before, with the axes and the bows, the general discussion, what is a weapon, what is a tool, or was it multi-purpose? And here, some information based on the archaeological findings. Most complete swords and spearheads are recovered from burials. They appear far less common in settlement context, where instead axes for different tasks, arrowheads, and single sword fittings may be found. The arrowheads and sword fragments testify to the presence of weapons in the individual households as well as the local manufacture and/or repair of weapons. Although it can be difficult to distinguish between indigenous and foreign production, some of the finest swords and spearheads were doubtless imported. So next, let's look at some ships. So here we have the Draka, heavy class ship. Here you see the skeleton crew, at least 32, so a light ship might have even only 8. And then crew capacity. The deck capacity is the number of troops that can participate in the battle. Travel speed is basically the operational mobility, how fast are you on the map. And then the sails is very important. There's the square sail and the Latin sail, written with double E. So I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. And it's, as you see in the tooltip, sails are good for high isolation and moderate top speed, and limited wind coverage, because you can turn them only so far. And Latin sails provide low isolation with higher top speed and a wider wind coverage. This wind coverage you basically see in your UI on the right side of the bottom during combat. There's several indications of areas for the sails. Seaworthiness is the resilience of the ship against the elements. So storms, open sea, and there are also upgrades that change that, and here are the hit points. As you can see here, these 5 dots, these are basically for the upgrades. Now here you see the potential upgrades, or you can clear the slot. So either northern shields or southern shields, but some of them are not available. As you can see, not available in settlement. Here the stout or thick shields, and then you have an alternative in arrow brazier. So the crew gets fire arrows, and they deal fire damage to the enemy ships and sails. Reinforced northern shields or reinforced southern shields. So basically, you have this upgrade. You have 3 different types of shield upgrades or an alternative. And this is also really interesting in this game because you have often to make a choice. Like for the shields, it's kind of obvious. Okay, the gold one is the best, but do I go for the fire arrows? Yes or no? But then I can't have the shields. Now for the deck, we have like arrow bins, boarding weapons, and deck tent. Here you get better seaworthiness and more cargo capacity. Here crew melee damage is increased by 5%, and here you get more quivers. So more ammo basically, better melee, and here basically seaworthiness increased, so you take less damage and also increased cargo capacity. This is now in the other tier, you get javelins and you get quivers, or you just focus on quivers and ignore the javelins. Depends what your troops are, because some troops are better with arrows and some troops are better with javelins, so throwing weapons or bows. Here again, cargo tent, sharpened boarding weapons, so that's basically just an upgrade of this one, and storm cover. And here is the same, basically this is now the S tier of all these before. Then for the oars, we have light oars, we have wide oars. So they increase the travel speed on the map and the oar speed in combat. And here you get oar power. So as you can see, wide oars provide more force with each pull, improving maneuverability. So this is better for turning. So on a big ship, that might make sense. Or also on a small ship, it really depends, because sometimes you even want to have more maneuverability. And maybe for a large ship, it has so low maneuverability that it doesn't change anything. I haven't played so far that I could tell you what is better here. And this probably also might be changed over time. And here basically are the straight upgrades in this regard. Sails, I haven't been able to upgrade sails so far. The few ports I've been to, they didn't provide it, I assume. These are both Bachrach ships. Okay, let's see what ships are in harbor. So we have the light longship here. As this is a light class, and as mentioned before, skeleton crew only of 80, but maximum of 32. Travel speed. And here the draft shallow. Yeah, that's very important. The Viking ships have older shallow draft. Faster through rivers and coastal seas, but slow on open waters. So this is also on the operational map. You can think about what's best to move around, basically, and maybe evade enemies or hunt them better. Then we have the Knar, which is very small. As you can see, you just need 6 men for a skeleton crew. But it also has a very good cargo capacity. If you compare this one has 900 and this one has 3000. So basically this is a cargo ship or a merchant ship. Yeah, so here we have only these available currently. And you can also see that what upgrades are installed, the bronze upgrades here. And you can also sell ships. So selling ships gives quite a lot of money, and capturing is, from what I've seen so far, not that difficult. There was just a patch now, so this might be changed. There was some statements that post-battle loot has been balanced. Now the good thing is now you can, if you have your ships in port, you can easily just leave the town. You go to the town center and then you leave, and then you're here with your army. My army is really slow because too much capacity, and if you want to get back on your ships, you go to port. So let's check out ships of the Southern Empire. Now here I have the Dromon, which was a historical ship. So this is the Byreme. As you can see, you have 2 lines of oars, one on the lower and one higher. And these were quite fast ships historically, and as you can see, they have a ram. So here you can do severe damage if you ram the enemy properly. And minimum crew is now 44. And here you see now the clear difference, because there's a deck and there are troops below the deck, that the deck capacity is 88 men, but maximum crew capacity is 132. And you also have a ballista now in front, which can engage the enemy ships. And we have both sails. So we have the Latin sail and we have the square sail. And this has a deep draft, so in open sea it does better, but near coastal waters it has more problems. And here we have all the upgrades. As you can see, we have now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different potential upgrades. Oh, not unlocked. I see it now. Not unlocked. So I assume you have to unlock them by certain missions or achievements. So here we can select the canopies. This seems to be only for decoration. At least there's nothing stated about what it does. But here we can see cotton sails. So travel speed on the map, so operational mobility is increased by 8% and sail rotation speed by 30%, which is of course important on the battle map. So here we have the sheeting, and it protects the hull from elements at cost of additional weight. So it increases seaworthiness, that the wear and tear is decreased. And it increases also ship hit points on the highest level, but also weight. And we have this. And here we have the ram. So there's the regular ram, which increases the weight, and the highest form also increases the ship hit points. Now the heavy reinforced ram has less weight. And the reinforced wake braver ram increases also top speed and travel speed and ship hit points. So this improves basically speed on the battle map in combat and also the travel speed. So tactical and operational speed are increased. Oh, this is interesting. So the reinforced battlements with barracks. Reinforced aft castle protects troops and strengthens the hull at cost of additional weight. Barracks allows more troops on board. So you increase the crew capacity, you increase weight and ship hit points. And then there's the alternative is reinforced battlements with improved radar. So increase the radar power and the radar effectiveness, but not the crew capacity here. And here we can select the ballista, and oh, we have a lot of options. Ballista or battlements. So the battlements increase the weight and the ship hit points. And then there's a fire grapeshot ballista, we have a fire pot ballista, there's a heavy iron ballista, and there's reinforced battlements. So the fire grapeshot throws multiple small burning stones, very effective against crew. Fire can burn sails and light ships. The fire pot ballista has large fire pots, dealing large amount of fire damage, burning ships and sails, very effective against crew. But you probably have less chance to hit them. So basically this is a shotgun. This is a shotgun fireball. This is a fireball, and I assume this is a big fireball. Now throws heavy iron shots, excellent at dealing damage to ships. So this is basically for doing hull damage and making big holes into this. And if you hit by accident a crew member, he's probably going down as well. So I haven't tested these out yet, so I can't really tell you how well they compare. So let's see what other ships the Southern Empire has. So this is the Dao, it's a light ship. It has a good cargo capacity, so this seems to be basically a cargo ship or fishing ship. As you can see, no ram. And it only has a Latin sail. So this is basically like, seems to be the Southern Empire variant of the Knar, or the other way around. Then we have the Western Galley. So this is a regular galley. And as you can see, this is a warship, cargo capacity 700. Square sail, draft shallow. Now here we have the Eastern Galley, and here in comparison is the Western Galley. As you can see, it's more narrow and seems higher, but I think actually this is it just looks higher, but it is not. It's just because it's more narrow. Comparable stats, it seems. Seaworthiness 21. Oh, this is 32 seaworthiness. Hit points, minor difference. Cargo capacity is the same. Weight almost the same. Travel speed is the same. Oh, here we have a Dromachion. This has one line of oars. It's a Latin sail and a square sail. The heavy ship, 30 crew, warship, considering the cargo capacity, travel speed of 291, which is pretty fast. That's faster than a Dromon. But overall, in seaworthiness, it's quite behind. It's a nice ship as well. As you can see, no ram. Yep. Let's check below the waterline. No ram. Also, it seems no ballista. Oh, no, it might be able to upgrade that to... You might be able to add a ballista here. Well, let's buy it. And we figure that out. Yeah, we can. So yeah, now we have a ballista on it. Now here, let's take a look at the Kobita. This is the cargo ship. As you can see, cargo capacity 2,600. Class medium, minimum crew of 10 men. And a travel speed of 2.9. And shallow draft. It seems to be a nice, fast cargo ship. Now, of course, there are way more ships in the game, but I just wanted to give you a short overview about 2 or 3 cultures, what we have available, and I assume there might be coming more, or some, as you can see, some of the upgrades are not available. And also in the other ports, there were far less ships available. There was no Kobita, and also no Dao, or Do, or however you pronounce that. I mean, you didn't come to this channel for correct pronunciation, I assume, unless it's German. So, we're doing a new playthrough here, and I start off with a Nord. No hair, there's my beard more or less. Yeah, a bit more of that. We play almost on Bannerlord difficulty. I don't want to have dead clan members and dead heroes. Everything else should be realistic difficulty or challenging AI. So tactically it's challenging, but strategically less so. So I did this before. Yeah, let's take Nordicus of the Nerds. I think that's quite fitting. Yeah, I think we go with a nerdy boar. So yeah, we are the nerdy boars. I need a ranged weapon. So basically in the early game, what I usually do is I engage looters, but I'm alone. And how I go with that, I basically get a bow or a crossbow and then fight small groups of looters to gain base experience, which is quite fun, but also decently enough challenging. And let's see if we can get a bow here. Also no bow. I can't afford the crossbows, and the crossbows, these are also too big to fire from horseback, as you can see, but it's can't reload on horseback. Which makes sense. And we can take flags for profit, nice. You don't have any food here? Okay. So I guess, okay, here we can get grain and here we can get grapes. Let's see where we go. Do we get a Legata? Yeah, in worst case we go here. They should have. The Battanians usually should have bows because Battania is full of bowmen. They have the best bowmen in the game, I think. Trade. Yes. Hunting bow, mountain hunting bow, balanced man, and masterwork. Okay. We could go for this, but let's check. All of them can be used from horseback. This is very good. Yeah, I think I take that. I can afford it. And we have a decent amount of arrows now. Yeah, we have 54 arrows now, which gives us a very good chance. And there were some looters over here. Yeah, let's go for them. I definitely can reach them. Let's see how that works out. So where are they? Are they over there? So now I have a sumpter horse, as far as I know. This is really slow. And also, I have very low skill. So that means, as you can see, the spread. And they're throwing rocks at me, which I don't want to catch ideally. Nice. First hit. And also the rocks can interrupt your aiming, which you don't want. Oh, nice headshot. And the harder the shots you take and you hit, the more experience you get. As you can see, my experience went up very high. And you can also see the complete where you hit the enemy on which body part and what damage it did. Yeah, I was lucky. Only took 2 hit points as damage. Oh! Yeah, this is what you want to avoid. Like getting stuck in the trees while 10 or more looters are chasing you. Ah, that was also close again. As you can see, he has already blood on him, so he was previously hit, and we got a new level. That was not the best move, but we took out another one. Yeah, that's a complete fail. And oh, nice! A neck damage, yeah. Ah, come on, guys. I think he needs one more shot. He's bleeding already. Oh no. He held out. Oh, nice hit. And another headshot. 2 in a row. Nice. Third one. Okay. Another one down. And another one. No, he didn't survive that. And another one. And another one. And another one. Okay, I think I'm gonna win this unless I run into a tree now. Well, and he already, you see he has one, or he has 2 arrows stuck in him. One on the left side and one on the right side. And let's now don't jinx it. And yeah, we got him in the neck. Poor guy. 14 enemies killed. I mean, one was wounded, so I can take him prisoner. And I gained a lot of experience, as you can see. I get 20 riding and 20 with the bow. And now I can upgrade. I select my perks for the bow, since when you reach 25 points, skill on 1, you can select one of 2 perks usually. There's some with only 1, like here. Bow control, accuracy penalty while moving, reduced by 30%. This is nice, and headshots do more damage with bows, 30%. Also, there's a second for captain. That's basically when you are leading troops. So currently the personal is the most important. Headshots damage with bows increased by 30 is good, but basically we can one-shot most with a headshot anyway. I think it's more important to hit in the first place. So I take this one. By riding, you can go for 20% more charge damage, which is okay, but I prefer 10% more maneuvering, so I'm more maneuverable with my steed. Okay, we get rid of the prisoners, and let's go down there in the open areas. Oh, there are also looters. Oh, there are many looters. We need to be careful that they don't join up. If they're too close to other, yeah, this would be 14 or even 21 looters if they match up. Go on. Oh, the deserters. I want to avoid them definitely. Come on, guys. Yeah. So we want our companion to gain some experience, so we send her in to fight. Guess it's time to loosen up the enemy a bit. Or get loosened up. Nice! That's fire support. Oh, she went down. Yeah, but since I selected companions don't die, now you know why I do this? Yeah, the stones don't do much damage anymore. There was a time when stones were quite dangerous. So let's try to do the harder thing. This is the main problem that they usually block. I mean, which kind of makes sense, but... and you also risk getting hit by the others. Yeah, I think we go back to shooting them in the face. 2 more to go. 1 more to go. If I had a shield, I actually would dismount now and try to fight him on the ground. But I'm not good enough at fighting without a shield because my blocking in this game in melee is atrocious. And with a shield, it's basically... oh, nice, I actually hit him. So, he knows how to block. Oh, he survived that. 2 hits with an axe. I mean, he barely has any energy left, but he has some left. Gotcha. The nerdy boars won another battle. And see, W means wounded in this case. So let's sell. Let's go for hunting more looters. My companion is completely out of action. Still recovering, so let's try some pot shots here, because if we hit here, we get far more experience since these shots are harder to hit. One down, 2 down, 3 down. Nice. So doing regular archer stuff is not that easy. Well, it is possible. Actually, wait, they have slings, so going melee on them might make more sense. Of course, I botched that, and now they brought out their melee weapons. I think he was not fast enough. Gotcha. Here you see I charged him accidentally. 1 damage point. 2 more perks unlocked. Yeah, that's better than hers. So... oh, and this... yeah, this is way better armor for her, not for us. And here riding now... what hit points do your mount? 20% increased. Or a chance of your mount dying or becoming lame after fall in battle. Yeah, I usually reload. I must be honest here. Sometimes I do save scum. And so I generally take this one. And the 20% can prevent your horse from going down, basically prematurely as well. So the question is, where do I put my next focus point? I think you go with archery. Let's go and sell the stuff. We're going to buy a horse down here for our companion. And ideally also some slingshots. Oh, 9 looters. So she's back. Now at this time I try to fight most of them down or decimate them quite a lot and then send her into engage that she can get some experience. If she had the sling, that would already way better because then she could fire from a long distance. Also would be nice if I actually aim properly. Guess I did that now. And let's engage them. So 2 down. 7 to go. 6. As you can see, the troops are all have different sizes. The guys, this is really nice. And this guy, for instance, is broader in the middle, broader and taller. Well, he went down. 3 left. Time to call in to charge. And I guess I go melee as well. You can also jump into enemies or jump over obstacles. Usually fences. Oh! Those guys went for melee. Oh, and I botched that one. Oh! That is interesting. I haven't seen that for ages. Took each other out at the same time. Quite nice. Oh, I guess the other guy, he took out her after she took out the other one. He's hiding in the bush. Oh! That was a nice shot of him. Another one! And he survived that. This guy did more damage than everyone else so far. Well, in the end it didn't pay off. And we got him as well. And she earned, yeah, one-handed. Oh, we got butter. Nice, that's good for morale. I think we go to Sargoth. Armor penetration with bows increased by 10% or knocking point movement speed penalty while reloading. Now, movement speed penalty is only there when we are on foot, and usually if we are on foot, we are in a siege, either defending or attacking. There, it's not that important. And the armor penetration can be quite important because later on everyone is armored. I think I take this one for now. Shut up. Oh, more training. Night fight. As you can see, the speed of the projectile is calculated in. So if I ride towards them, that riding speed is actually also accounted for, which I really like in this game. Oh, well, it was still enough for a lucky headshot. I didn't aim for a head here. Peasants with pitchforks. Oh no, it is our looters, not peasants. So we have a horse for her, and we can afford it. So welcome to the cavalry. I think we get another horse to increase our carrying capacity. Oh, he is scouting as well. Tactics, leadership. He has a decent amount of medicine. Generosity and honest. How much does he cost? Probably can't afford him, or...
I don't think I know you.
Yeah. How much is the wage for... Yeah, we did 32. And now we have our first small band. Oh, and we need to get rid of the prisoners, because they also slow us down. Oh! 11 looters. Yeah, and they're villagers. Yeah, let's fight them. Where is... Oh, she's still wounded. Oh my god, this game looks so amazing. Such a clear view as well. And I miss every shot, because yeah. Nice, at least a headshot. Ah! Oh, that was a very lucky headshot. But also did very limited amount of damage, only 70. Oh, you're not going for my recruits with your sling. These are pristine, fresh troops. Not allowed to hurt them yet. Only when most of you are damaged or wounded. I think he's already hit. Yeah, he was already hit. Yes, it's time for them to charge now. Oh, he was also hit before. I think you are fresh, and I of course miss you. Come on! Oh, I didn't want to hit that guy. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think this might be it. Oh, we lost one. Very nice. Only one guy died. Ideally no one, but yeah. So much I can do. And 3 of them upgraded basically. So this is how this works in the game. You have like for each troop type, you have an experience pool. And if the pool is full, basically you can upgrade 1. Or in this case, it's full enough to upgrade 3. And so we can go with a Fladian, Landian lever crossbowman or a footman. Now early on, especially against looters, ranged troops are really good. Because looters don't have shields. They have to walk regularly, and so the missile troops basically can hit them a few times. And also if you have the regular recruits, you have them in front. So they can do quite a lot of damage and break up the enemy formation before it can even do anything. And also crossbowmen also can engage armored troops very well as well. Now, so in this game, there is very limited dedicated training, which makes sense because for gameplay reasons, as it would be too easy. One way to train your troops beside combat, like you saw this experience bar filling up, is with perks. Some of them are in the leadership tree. Now here you see combat tips. Party leader, 2 experience per day to all troops in the party, and the alternative is 4 experience per day to tier 1 and tier 2 troops, so basically the lowest 2 ones. Which I generally prefer, because once your troops reach tier 3, basically, they just get better and the amount of experience is limited. Now, I show you now the 3 for like the Fladians we have. We had Fladian recruits. Here we are. So we have these guys, and then we upgraded the 3 guys to Fladian lever crossbowmen. Over here we have basically the infantry tree. So lever crossbowman, regular crossbowman, hardened crossbowman, or a seasoned seafarer. As you can see, there are waves below the symbol. So these are special troops for ship to be deployed on ships that they don't have a negative impact if they're on sea. And over here, for instance, there's no regular infantry with or cavalry that is better for ship combat. So either you don't put these guys on a ship. These are fine. Now this is how it works in game. Now the question is, how was it done during the medieval times? Training is not limited to combat training, of course. So you need training for marching, for formation, for deploying information, for deploying on the battlefield. So you have basically equipment drills, you have marching drills, you have combat drills. Now the issue with medieval times is we have actually very limited amount of sources here. This is in contrast to the Roman times, where we both for the Roman Republic and the Empire, we have a lot of detailed text about training, and the sources there range from administrative documents over discussions on how to conduct everything, manuals, and also archaeological finds of training grounds, vast training grounds in fortresses. In the late Roman period, there was a manual by Vegetius, which in medieval times was constantly reprinted, revised, and it was one of the most copied non-religious texts in the medieval times that was from the late antiquity. For medieval training, we have very limited sources compared to Roman training. This led some authors to note that medieval combat was very simple and that we can't really talk about armies, and it was more a bunch of guys with weapons. The historians David and Bernard Bachrach note this makes no sense. So they don't think that's true, and I agree, because they note there are many maneuvers described in other sources that happened in combat. For instance, doing a feint attack or some other aspects, and for that you need the trained men and also the trained horses. There must be, for concerted maneuvers and everything, you need training. This doesn't happen out of the box. And the same goes for the use of weapons, particularly complex weapons like crossbow or especially siege engine weapons. Now you could argue, okay, siege guys, these were special engineers or special trained guys, but still, even with the crossbow or composite bow and other weapons, It's not that straightforward that they don't have any training. Another interesting aspect is training is often mentioned in the Bible, which was a text the aristocratic youth was very familiar with because it was used for basic education and also religious education. And this was also done with even the aristocrats that didn't went the religious path. Because usually in aristocracy, some of the kids were basically put on the clerical path. But they were generally educated in this. Religion was a very important aspect in medieval times, as you probably know. For instance, there were various parts of the Bible where training is mentioned, for instance, Psalm 144:1. And here is a quote from David and Bernard Bachrach's book, and it notes, throughout the medieval millennium, most foot soldiers fought in the context of a phalanx. Whether they were on the offensive or defense, and whether the opponent was on horseback or on foot. This meant that the highly complex and intricate dance of the duel that is illustrated in medieval fencing manuals surviving in great numbers from Italy and Germany had little relevance to the battlefield experience of most medieval soldiers. Duels, whether fought for judicial purposes or in the context of tournaments, demanded an exceptionally high level of skill from individual fighters, who operated within a rigorously enforced system of rules. By contrast, men serving in a phalanx with a sword or a short spear had to work in cooperation with the men on their right and left within the chaotic tumult that characterized the front lines as two phalanxes came into contact with each other. As today, combat is a team effort, and it's less about individual excellence and more about the collective capabilities. Now, in the mid-9th century, Archbishop Rabanus Maurus of Mainz wrote an updated version of Vegetus' military manual, and he had a lengthy section about training, about various exercises, and what strokes work best in certain situations. And he recommended, like the Romans, to use training weapons that had double the weight of the real weapons to make it then easier during a real fight. Now, currently we are very early on in the game, but later on you can take over castles and also cities. And here you have a city, and if you click here, you here see the influential people in this game. But if you click here, you see actually the troops. And here's the garrison of Sargot and the militia of Sargot. I think this is now a good time to look at how militia training was done in the medieval times, or what we know. Sadly, we know very little. We have almost no information, but generally the performance of the militia was looked down upon. It was very negatively commented on, and this is very important, and it makes more sense if you look at it. The negative portrayal was also due to the aristocracy being the authors. And the broader context here is the emphasis that the nobility, basically, or the upper class, put on their inherent superiority over the commoners. And we know that militias also fought well, because there are also various accounts where they are noted they were effective in battle, even though there was a strong bias by the authors, basically, to talk them down. And as such, we can assume that they trained. And to add another quote here, such part-time fighting men were particularly effective when they were deployed to defend walls or fortifications, or when in the field where they were supported by well-trained professional soldiers. Now, training was likely ordered by royal authorities, especially in more centralized factions. In urban militias, it happened with the communities, and there is the assumption that potentially training occurred regularly during religious festivals, since everyone came together at a certain place generally and there was enough leisure time. And there's also certain hints to that, because here again is a quote: the repeated ecclesiastical legislation against carrying arms in churches or on church property may be understood as a reaction to this type of gatherings. So now I want to increase the morale, and you can increase morale by having a wide variety of food. So we have butter, fish and grains. So ideally we take on some olives, and also they are quite cheap here. And some grapes we don't have, cheese we don't have, we have butter, sheep tools. There's no meat here, but we can take a hog. And can we butcher it here? No, we can. After we bought it, it should be possible. So yeah, we can afford that. And now we go in the inventory. We go to the hogs and we slaughter them. And now we have meat. As you can see, our morale went up by 5 points due to food variety. Personal is from, I think, my leadership skills. And recent events is because we won a battle. What about morale in medieval times? As we all know, in combat and in war, morale is very important. It's a key element. And there's a very nice example here from the medieval times. For instance, Edward I, when he attempted to conquer Scotland. Now, initially, he tried it with large armies of conscripts from northern England. And here was a problem. We know from some data, from the documents, that about 50 to 75% deserted at the first opportunity. Now he learned from his mistakes, and in 1303 he changed this. He went for volunteers and he paid and fed them well. As you also see here, food, very important. Now, the issue is medieval societies were also very religious societies. There were certain aspects that even good food and good money were not enough. And there was also basically a system of spiritual support with chaplains, and they taking confessions and also making sermons during a campaign. Now, particularly taking of confessions is very important. Additionally, Edward I did also a propaganda campaign in England versus the Scots, but he didn't only portray them as enemies of England, but also as an enemy of all Christians. So you can also see here that the religious aspect is very important again. Now we also know that some armies, some leaders, they had sacred religious relics on their campaign. For instance, like parts of the cross of Christ, or a supposed part of it, and other elements. Similarly, the home front played also a part, because there were ceremonies at home to pray for the success at the armies at the front. Now, one important aspect was to address the religious fears. They had regular fears like being maimed on the battlefield, being killed or wounded, but there was a strong focus also on the afterlife. So, to be able to go into heaven and similar aspects. This was very dominant in medieval times. Of course, it varied between the different communities, the different times, and also between the individuals, but generally the afterlife, or what will come in heaven, was very important. Now, for the early Christian church, there was quite a problem here, because originally confessions were basically done once in a lifetime and basically before death. So basically the last rites were the only time you did your confession initially. Now you probably can see the problem here. If you're a soldier on a campaign and you don't know if you survive the next battle, yeah, it's a bit of an issue. And also, once you engaged in battle and you killed someone, you committed a mortal sin after all. Homicide was a mortal sin, and once somebody confessed it, a soldier basically would have to stop his profession after that. Ultimately, there was a solution found, and to quote Bernard and David Bachrach, the ultimate solution was the development of a regime of repeatable confession and penance whenever a sinner felt the need for spiritual cleansing. The idea and practice of repeatable confession developed first in Ireland, and from the spread to England, and then to the rest of the Latin West. And through this we saw the results. Basically, soldiers could confess the sins before battle and after battle. And now we have a new logistical challenge. Armies needed a large amount of priests to perform all these confessions. So basically we have first surviving evidence of recruiting priests to serve as military chaplains from 742. Carloman required that every unit commander must have on staff a priest capable of hearing confessions. Yeah, and this is also like how military history might have influenced that you can go regularly to confession if you like. Because originally it was just the last rites. Now Bannerlord features a lot of weapons. Here you can only see a small amount. These are the shields, here are the melee weapons. But let's look at the shields and ranged weapons. Here you have arrows, burning arrows, whisper arrows, lowland arrows, bodkin arrows. You have a large amount of different weapons. You have short bow, you have longbows, you have hunting bows. You have various composite bows. And so I think it's time to talk about weapons in the medieval context, what we know and what we don't know. First, some aspects about in-game which you should be aware if you're new to a game. Not all missile weapons can be fired from horseback. So usually here you have indicated, like you see the sling is a throwing weapon. The crossbow is a crossbow weapon. So throwing, crossbow and arrow, bow are different skills in your personal skill. And here it is noted, not usable with one hand. And can't be used with a shield, for instance. This is the same with my bow, yes. And here we have a masterwork lowland longbow. So that is a special variant of the longbow. And here you see, very important, can't be used with mounts. It's too big. You have the same with some, particularly with most crossbows besides the light crossbow. Because these crossbows generally had a mechanism where you stepped into them to reload them, and you can't do that on horseback, or some even had a winch or something. The same is with a longbow. A longbow is very large, and you have problems doing that on a horse. Now, in some cases there are perks that allow still the use of them, but generally in the beginning of the game you don't have them. So if you want to go for a horse archer like I played here in the beginning, don't get a longbow, or check definitely for these icons if they can be used. I'm talking about experience. You can fire the first shot, but you can't reload. And also be sure to bring ammo. For instance, here you can't buy bolts. What about that in medieval times, the historical aspect? Now, there were several types of bows in the medieval times as well, most notably the short bow, the long bow, and also the crossbow. Now, very important here, short bow is not necessarily just a short bow. Originally, it meant it was a composite bow, basically. Bradbury noted the following: the problem would be diminished if modern writers avoided describing short, ordinary bows as short bows. The short bow proper is a particularly kind of bow built with considerable craftsmanship. It's a composite bow, the stave made normally in 3 pieces, center part and 2 wings. Now, Bernard and David Bachrach used different, in my opinion, better terminology here. They note that they were wooden bows that were rather simple and composite bows that were far more complicated to produce. I won't use the term short bow here anymore and speak of the composite bow. Now, the composite bow was usually made out of wood and some bone and other elements, but there's also very little evidence for significant use of composite bows in Western Europe. Only from illustrations, and it can be assumed that it was very rare. Yet composite bows were common in the East. For instance, the Saracen used them quite often. Due to its size and power, it was ideal for horse archers. Generally, in illustrations of the time, the composite short bows were used for the enemy. Bernard and David Bachrach note, the major advantage of the composite bows was that they stored much more potential energy in the bow than a wooden bow of comparable length. It is the potential energy in the bow rather than the draw of the string that provides the force to drive the projectile. Thus, inch for inch, a composite bow is much more powerful than a wooden self-bow. Note, self-bow is a regular bow, and the terminology is used to distinguish it from the crossbow. However, composite bows are very susceptible to damage from moisture, even when properly stored in fur-lined cases, and are also much more complex to construct and expensive to produce. Now, this is also reflected in game, where the composite bows are usually quite expensive, and their availability is also usually limited to other cultures like the Asarai and the Kusite Khanate, which are on other locations on the map. You can see the map. Here we have the Asarai. And here we have the two-sided cannon. Up here are the Nords, here the Sturgeons, and here we have the Empires. Three Empires, the Battanians, and Flandria. Now next is the longbow, which is a very iconic and famous weapon, and we particularly know it for the English longbow and the English longbowmen and their effectiveness. It's just a bit of a problem here. As Jim Bradbury notes, what was a longbow? It may be surprising to find that answer is not as obvious as one might have supposed. For a start, the word longbow was never used in the age with which we always link the weapon, nor was there any special word in Latin or in French until the very end of the Middle Ages. Even when it was called longbow to distinguish it from the crossbow or the shortbow, which I previously mentioned is composite bow proper. Now Bradbury notes that the notion that longbow is something special is actually a modern depiction. Now the longbow is actually an ordinary wooden bow made from a single piece of wood, although it could be enforced with horn at the nocks. He notes further that the longbow probably didn't emerge at a certain point, but rather was the result of constant improvement of ordinary bows over a long period of time. States that there is no fundamental difference between the Needham bows from the Roman period, the Norman bows on the Bayeux Tapestry, and the longbows of the 100 Years' War. Now, since the Needham bow is estimated to be around from 200 to 400 AD, and the 100 Years' War lasted until 1453, we have a time span of about 1000 years with a very similar bow design. Which brings us also to a discussion about the effectiveness of the longbow. Now, there are very historical accounts that claim that arrows could penetrate plate armor, whereas others deny this. And probably both accounts are correct. As Clifford Rogers notes, King David and King Philip, after all, doubtless had the best armor available. Yet that did not save either of them from suffering multiple serious wounds. Yet we need to consider that the material of the armor and the arrowheads probably differed widely even for the same period. After all, even World War I, the steel armor plates for German machine gunners had a huge variety in terms of quality, and those were produced in the industrialized age. Another aspect is of course that only limited number of troops were equipped with plate armor or other high quality armor. Hence a knight in shining armor amongst a large number of troops and horses being killed and incapacitated by arrows is probably not ideal for morale. After all, many times the number of wounded and killed soldiers was below 50% and often it's even below 25%. Yet as always, there's a certain dynamic in tactics, technology, measures and countermeasures, which makes statements about effectiveness of certain weapons that was used centuries ago quite problematic. As Clifford Rogers points out, I'm willing to concede Guy's point that in decades after the end of the 100 Years' War in 1453, armor improved and archery declined to the point that English longbowmen were no longer capable of wreaking the kind of havoc I've described above. But I think there's plenty of evidence to show that at the Battle of Agincourt in 1415 and for some decades thereafter, English longbowmen remained fully capable of killing many on the battlefield. Additionally, David and Bernard Bachrach note about reproduced bows from archaeological findings. An examination of these bows from the Hede Bay excavation and replicas that were made using wood of the same type and dimensions suggest that these weapons had an effective killing range of 200 meters, which is about 650 feet, against men wearing mail, when the length of arrow, the quality of its fletching and the pull of the bow were optimized. Now let's move on to the crossbow, which was already used in Roman times and considerably improved throughout the Middle Ages. It was not very popular with the English, although it was often used by mercenaries. One major advantage of the crossbow was that it could be readied and aimed without additional effort, unlike a bow, where the string constantly needed to be held back. This is also very well reflected and handled in the game, where when I use a crossbow I can take time while aiming, whereas with the bow the window of opportunity is far smaller, and of course with a higher skill and perks this can be extended. As you probably have seen before in my gameplay, sometimes the area after a while of aiming gets really big where I potentially hit, and I usually then don't fire in the reload, and this is here reflected by the situation. In real life, any Bannerlord, this comes at a price, namely reloading time. A crossbow took quite some time, thus the rate of fire was considerably lower than that of bows. Depending on the size of the crossbow, it could be reloaded by hand or needed mechanical devices, ranging from simple ones like push and pull levers to complex ones. This is also reflected in-game that some crossbows and bows can be used on mounted troops. Although there are also perks that change this requirement, at least for the player. Let's look at the differences between crossbow and longbows, where the one is better suited than the other. In short, the main differences were, and most of them also apply in-game, higher rate of fire for the longbow, with about 4 to 5 shots in the time a crossbowman could fire one bolt and reload a second. I think in-game the difference is less strong. Higher penetration of the crossbow for short ranges, less space taken by the longbow on the battlefield to the horizontal bow of the crossbow, thus the same amount of frontage allowed more firepower. Now, a crossbow could be used with just basic training, whereas a longbow required longer or more extensive training. Now, I have heard some other accounts that bow training is not that heavy, but this is also reflected in-game. There's no extra strength required for aiming a crossbow. Thus, in general, crossbow was less dependent on strength, because the hard part is basically reloading it and then holding it, of course. But you didn't have to extend your one arm to hold the string back. Longbows were generally quite simple weapons, thus easier to maintain, repair, and cheaper to produce than crossbows. So, and let's continue and do some fighting. So one major drawback now is, since I have the infantry with me, oh, and I forgot to sell the prisoners. Yeah, the prisoners slow me down by 0.3, which makes these looters the same speed as I have. But I think they ran into a one-way, yeah. No, it's not a one-way, but come on, guys. Catch. Oh, wait, we can. Oh, we could recruit them, 2 of them. Can we do that? That would increase our speed. Then again, do I want to have looters? Oh, we could catch the other ones, so let's do this. Oh, now we have our crossbowman. Let's move our regular infantry a bit forward. And our companion is ready, so charge. Yeah, and down she goes. Oh, that was close. My crossbow guys haven't killed anyone. Oh, they did now. Nice. And to kill another guy. I think I need to change the display information. Report casualties. I think this one is the one with the extended. Yes, now you can see who killed whom up there. Yeah, crossbow. Took out another enemy. Oh! Okay. Let the infantry charge now. It's 3 against 3. Okay. 3 against 2. Assuming that the crossbowmen don't take out another guy. Okay, we need to get rid of our prisoners. They're slowing us down. And let's see if we're increasing readership. Yeah, we do. Nice. Yeah, and down she goes. Yeah, this is enemy fighting a war. Oh, looters. Okay, go to the tavern. Slowly fighting our way to the top. Yeah, now we have proper speed. And we attack them. Oh, it's really bad weather. Okay, we got one. Oh, I mean, our troops got one. I can't see where I can see anything. And we didn't lose anyone. Okay, that was pure luck. Oh, the levy crossbowman did good work. And they all get upgrades. Band pickups. Oh, fine arm reps. Nice. Now we can rip through most. troops with these crossbowmen. Assuming that the crossbowmen don't take out another guy. Okay, we need to get rid of our prisoners. They're slowing us down. And let's see if we're increasing readership. Yeah, we do. Nice. Yeah, this is enemy fighting a war. Oh, looters. Okay, go to the tavern. Slowly fighting our way to the top. Yeah, now we have proper speed. And we attack them. Oh, it's really bad weather. Okay, we got one. Oh, I mean, our troops got one. He can't see where I can see anything. And we didn't lose anyone. Okay, that was pure luck. Oh, the levy crossbowmen did good work. And they all get upgrades. Band pickups. Oh, fine arm reps. Nice. Now we can rip through most troops with these crossbowmen. So I think we let our ships engage and then we try to pick off the enemies with ramming and our ballista. Close miss, but still a miss. Okay, oh, this is their biggest ship. Oh, that was friendly fire. That wasn't. And ram, nice. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I lost the previous battles because I didn't use... Nice! Oh, I forgot how much fun that is. And... yeah, that was not ideal. 2. Come on. Yeah. Only 3 shots left. Yeah, I think I made that count. And the last shot. Oh, of course. Oh, they're storming our ship. So hoist our sails into battle. And tell our ships to engage the enemy or skirmish. So this time I try to engage them a bit differently. So I'm still really bad when it comes to naval combat, which is kinda historically accurate, I guess, because as an Austrian, yeah, we are not so fond of the sea. And I like snorkeling, but I prefer fresh water. Less hostile creatures, basically nothing that really will hurt or bite you. I mean, catfish can be quite a bit annoying, but not really dangerous. They can be quite aggressive. Let's see. That was too close. Too short. Oh, nice one. Perfect shot. Keep hitting them, guys. Keep hitting them. And we missed. So there are a lot of friendlies over there as well. But this one isn't friendly. Oh no. Let's turn around. Let's see where this is going. Yeah, we're taking heavy losses, as you can see. Oh, this one, he's trying to catch us. The ship over there with four... Oh, is this an enemy directly in front of us? I think it is. Ah, that was too short again. Nice. Let's try ramming. Ah, that was too high. Oh. Ineffective ram. I think one of our ships just sank. Oh. Nice. I think we're driving over the enemy and our ship here. Yeah, we basically threw for the whole formation. And yeah, we are way behind in losses. Maybe we can help our ship over there. Oh, I think it's basically already gone for. Nice. Yeah, they decrewed our ship. No! And now we're ramming our ship. Well, we deny it to the enemy. Deny the enemy transportation. Keep rowing. I got a point in tactics, not probably from making many errors, because you can also learn from the errors. Nope. Is there one target we want to ram? Let's sink this ship. So let's try to relieve the enemy, not to relieve the blockade, but break through the blockade so that we can take part in the defense. 76 troops will be lost. That's pretty good trade, I would say. Oh no, I wanna sally out of the gate. So yeah, we do a counterattack. Okay, I guess we charge. Everyone charge. This should be an epic battle. Let's see, I think we have to... We attack their camp? Okay, there are 5 horse archers coming. These are very annoying generally. But, oh, we have a decent amount of our own archers. A bit slow. Okay. Nice, got him. Oh, excellent. 2 horses. You see here all the javelins. A big thank you to Tailwords Entertainment for sponsoring this video. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.